A terrified young girl bursts out of her home in tears, sprinting directly to a garbage collector and urgently pointing toward her residence. Within minutes, a fleet of police cars floods the area, sealing off the entire street. What the frightened child confesses to the garbage man transforms his routine morning route into a harrowing ordeal, uncovering secrets that had long been concealed. Before we delve deeper, let us know where you're tuning in from. If these stories resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe. Marcus Taylor skillfully navigated his garbage truck through the tranquil streets of a suburban neighborhood. The morning sun cast elongated shadows across meticulously manicured lawns and pristine homes. He glanced at the dashboard clock, 8:20 a.m., realizing he was nearly 35 minutes behind his usual schedule. This delay was a constant reminder that his precise routine had been disrupted by his partner's sudden illness and the absence of a replacement. Maneuvering the bulky vehicle alone, Marcus reflected on his 2 years of dedicated service. His movements were smooth and efficient, honed by countless early mornings traversing these familiar streets. Brightwood unfolded before him, its immaculate appearance sharply contrasting with his utilitarian truck. Marcus took immense pride in his work, understanding the crucial role he played in maintaining the community's cleanliness and functionality. He knew every street, every corner, and even the routines of many residents along his route. This familiarity made the morning's delay all the more exasperating. He valued his punctuality and efficiency, and today's setback bruised his professional pride. As he approached the next residence on his route, Marcus noticed a woman and her daughter stepping out of their car toward their home. He was well acquainted with them. Over the years of daily trash collection, Rachel and her daughter Lucy had become familiar faces. Typically, Marcus would exchange friendly greetings with these neighbors, a small gesture that made his job more pleasant and fostered a sense of community. However, today something felt noticeably different. As Rachel and Lucy headed to their front door, Marcus called out his usual warm, "Good morning." The response he received was atypical and unsettling. Lucy kept her head lowered, avoiding any eye contact, while Rachel offered only a terse, strained, "Hi, morning." The interaction lacked their customary warmth and friendliness, leaving Marcus with an uneasy feeling. Returning the bin to its designated spot, Marcus's mind processed the unusual exchange. Although concerned by their atypical behavior, Lucy's somber demeanor and Rachel's hurried manner gnawed at his conscience. He reminded himself that everyone has tough days and shouldn't take it personally. Perhaps they were delayed by an urgent matter or dealing with personal family issues. Marcus reassured himself not to dwell too much as he proceeded to collect their bin. After all, it wasn't his place to delve into the private lives of the residents he served. His job was to gather the trash and move on, maintaining a professional yet friendly demeanor. Lifting Rachel and Lucy's bin, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The bin felt unusually heavy, different from the norm. He attributed it to his imagination, a byproduct of the morning's disrupted schedule and the odd interaction earlier. With practiced ease, Marcus maneuvered the bin toward the truck's mechanical arm. As he did so, his reflection in the vehicle's side mirror caught his attention. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of early mornings and long hours his job demanded, yet there was also a resolve in his gaze, a pride in the essential service he provided to the community. As Marcus operated the controls to empty Rachel's bin, something unusual caught his eye. A loosely tied trash bag shifted, revealing part of its contents. He paused, his hand hovering over the controls. Brand new children's clothing with tags still attached, a complete school outfit, a backpack, and unused school supplies neatly piled atop new toys. The discovery halted him. His usual professional detachment was replaced by curiosity and concern. Marcus stood by the truck, contemplating his next move. His schedule was already behind, and he typically adhered strictly to professional boundaries regarding residents' discarded items. It wasn't his role to question what people threw away, yet the disposal of brand new items troubled him, especially with nearby donation centers that could benefit others. He thought of children in less fortunate areas who could use these items. Discarding them felt wasteful. Marcus's mind raced with questions. Why would Rachel dispose of new items? It seemed so wasteful, so unlike the family he thought he knew. He wondered if they were aware of the donation drop-off points where such items could be useful. The internal struggle continued as Marcus stood there, torn between his professional responsibilities and his personal ethics. On one hand, he had a schedule to keep and rules to follow. On the other, he couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. The earlier strange behavior of Rachel and Lucy, combined with this unusual find, painted a troubling picture. After careful thought, Marcus made a decision. He halted the mechanical arm before it could dispose of the items and, with a sense of determination, retrieved the bag from the bin. Despite being behind schedule, he chose to approach Rachel's door, a significant deviation from his usual protocol, driven by both concern and a desire to prevent unnecessary waste. As he walked up the driveway with the bag in hand, Marcus rehearsed his words. He didn't want to overstep or make Rachel uncomfortable, but he felt compelled to offer information about donation centers. His knocks initially went unanswered, but his persistence paid off after 2 rings. The door finally opened and Rachel appeared. Marcus was taken aback by her appearance. She looked notably disheveled, a stark contrast to her usual composed demeanor. In fact, she appeared even messier than when he had seen her moments ago outside. The transformation was striking and unsettling. "Mrs. Harper," Marcus began softly and apologetically, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing these items in your trash." He held up the bag, its contents partially visible. "I don't mean to invade your privacy, but I saw what was inside because the bag was loosely tied. I thought you might not be aware of the donation drop-off points in our area where these items could help others." Rachel's reaction was unexpectedly hostile. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice took on a sharp edge. "What I decided to throw away is none of your business. How dare you go through our trash?" Marcus was taken aback by her anger and attempted to explain further. "I apologize if I've overstepped. I just thought." Rachel cut him off abruptly. "If you want them so badly, take them. Just leave us alone." Her voice trembled slightly, a mixture of anger and something else. Fear, perhaps. Just as Rachel moved to close the door, a loud crash echoed from inside the house. The sound of shattering glass made both Marcus and Rachel flinch. They quickly glanced inside, and for a fleeting moment, Marcus saw fear cross Rachel's face before she slammed the door shut. Marcus stood there, stunned by the sudden turn of events. The uneasy feeling he had earlier now blossomed into full-blown worry. Something was clearly wrong here. But what could he do? He hesitated momentarily, debating whether to call the authorities. The ensuing silence from within the house left him uncertain. Finally, Marcus returned to his truck, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. He still didn't feel right about disposing of the brand new items, so he placed the rescued bag in the cab instead of tossing it in the back. Climbing into the driver's seat and starting the engine, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving something unresolved behind. As he drove to the next house, his professional training battled with his personal instincts. He had a job to do, a schedule to maintain, but the image of Rachel's fearful face and the sound of breaking glass haunted him. He found himself glancing back at Rachel's house in his rearview mirror, wondering if he should have done more, said more, or somehow tried to help. The weight of the rescued items in the cab seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment, a physical reminder of the moral dilemma he now faced. As Marcus continued his route, he couldn't help but feel that this ordinary Tuesday morning had suddenly become anything but ordinary. Moving from house to house, Marcus methodically continued his route despite his lingering unease. The familiar motions of his job, lifting bins, operating the truck's mechanical arms, returning empty containers, provided a semblance of normalcy, but his mind remained troubled by the earlier encounter with Rachel. Reaching a house 5 doors down from Rachel's, the rhythmic barking of a neighbor's dog behind a fence provided background noise. Marcus lifted another bin, his movements automatic while his thoughts drifted back to the strange events of the morning, the weight of the bin, the smell of the trash, the sound of the truck's engine. All these familiar sensations seemed somehow different today, colored by his worry and confusion. Without warning, a small figure darted out from between 2 parked cars. Before Marcus could fully register what was happening, Lucy appeared and clung to his leg. Her sudden presence startled him mid-task, and he struggled to balance the large trash bin in his arms while a child wrapped herself around his lower body. Marcus carefully set down the bin, his heart racing from the surprise. He paused the mechanical arms of the truck and removed his work gloves, crouching down to Lucy's eye level. It was then that he got a good look at her. She was dressed in a pristine blue floral dress, as if prepared for an outing, but her tearful face and trembling form suggested deep distress. "Please help," Lucy pleaded, her voice breaking through the morning quiet. She pointed toward her house, her small hand shaking as she did so. Marcus's professional demeanor softened as he faced the clearly distraught child. His movements were deliberate and gentle as he examined her for visible injuries, finding none. Despite her obvious distress and tears, the continued barking from the nearby yard added to the tension of the moment, a cacophonous backdrop to this unexpected scene. "Lucy, what's wrong?" Marcus asked gently, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "Are you hurt? Where's your mom?" But Lucy's emotional state only intensified at his questions. Her tears prevented coherent explanations, leaving Marcus struggling to understand the situation while trying to comfort the clearly terrified child. He began walking her back toward her house, hoping to find Rachel and get to the bottom of what is happening. Lucy resisted, pulling back against Marcus's gentle guidance. Her fear was palpable and only deepened Marcus's concern. What could have happened in the short time since I'd left your house to make Lucy so afraid? As they walked, Marcus tried again to communicate with Lucy. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe. Can you tell me what happened? Did something scare you?" Lucy's response was a mix of hiccups and sobs. "Dad. Mom's scared." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The pieces were starting to come together. The new clothes in the trash, Rachel's disheveled appearance, the sound of breaking glass, and now Lucy's terror. Something was very wrong in that house. They were about halfway back to Lucy's home when Marcus heard a door slam. He looked up to see a man emerging from the house, his stride purposeful and aggressive. Marcus instinctively positioned himself between the approaching figure and Lucy, his protective instincts kicking in despite his uncertainty about the situation. As the man drew closer, Marcus could see that he was tall and well-dressed in an expensive custom suit, creating a stark contrast to Marcus's work uniform. The man's face was contorted with anger, his eyes fixed on Lucy, who was cowering behind Marcus. As the man drew closer, he called out in a commanding voice, "What are you doing with my daughter?" His tone was accusatory, laced with barely contained anger. Lucy's grip on Marcus's leg tightened, her small body trembling against him. Marcus, trying to maintain a calm demeanor, responded evenly, "Sir, your daughter approached me. She seems upset. I was just trying to help." But the man cut him off abruptly, his demeanor shifting from threatening to condescending as he took in Marcus's garbage collector uniform. "Help? What could someone like you possibly do to help?" The father's prejudice became immediately apparent through his next words. "You have no business interfering with my family. Know your place, garbage man. You have no right to interfere. Give me my daughter now, or I swear I'll have you arrested. How dare a black criminal like you touch my daughter? Stop sticking your nose in other people's family matters." The verbal assault continued, each word dripping with disdain. "I suppose picking up trash is all someone with your limited intelligence could manage. Did you even finish high school, or were you too busy getting into trouble?" Marcus felt his jaw clench. The sting of the man's words hit him hard. He had faced prejudice before, but rarely so blatant and cruel. He was acutely aware of Lucy still hiding behind him, her small hands clutching at his uniform. The father's tirade escalated. "I should call your employer right now. Better yet, I'll call the police. How dare a black criminal like you touch my daughter? Stop sticking your nose in other people's family matters." Marcus struggled internally with his response. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to defend himself, to shout back at this man and his unfounded accusations, but he was acutely aware of how his reaction could be perceived. Lucy was still with him, And if he were to lose his temper or try to physically confront the man, it would only paint an uglier picture. Despite the father's provocative behavior, Marcus forced himself to remain calm. He recognized that any aggressive response would only reinforce racist stereotypes and potentially worsen the situation for Lucy. He took a deep breath, trying to center himself. "Sir Marcus," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I understand you're upset, but your daughter came to me asking for help. I'm just trying to make sure she's okay." The father scoffed. "She doesn't need help from the likes of you. Lucy, come here now." He reached out to grab Lucy's arm, but she shrank back, pressing herself closer to Marcus. Marcus felt torn. He knew he had no legal right to keep Lucy from her father, but every instinct told him something was wrong. With great reluctance, he turned to Lucy and crouched down to meet her eyes.
"Lucy, I'm sorry."
I can't protect you. I have a job to do, and your father is right. I don't have any authority here." The words felt like ash in his mouth, each one breaking his heart a little more. "You should go home with your dad." "Okay," Lucy replied, her eyes wide with fear and betrayal. As the father reached for her again and shoved her forward to walk back into the house, she suddenly broke free and ran back towards Marcus, who was about to climb into his truck cab. "Please don't make me go back. I'd rather die than go home with him. My dad is bad," Lucy cried out, her voice filled with desperation. Marcus froze his hand on the truck door. The shocking statement from such a young child sent a chill down his spine. He realized that his initial instincts were right. No child should ever feel so desperate and afraid of their own parent. In that moment, Marcus knew he couldn't walk away. The red flags were waving furiously now, and Marcus understood that this situation was far more serious than he had initially thought. Standing there with Lucy clinging to him and her father glaring daggers, Marcus knew that his next actions would be crucial. Whatever the consequences, whatever the risk to his job, he couldn't abandon this child who had placed her trust in him. Marcus took a protective stance as Lucy huddled behind him, his posture firm but non-threatening. He was acutely aware of the delicate balance he needed to maintain, protecting Lucy while not overstepping his legal boundaries or provoking her father into violence. The father advanced again, his face contorted with rage. "You have no right to interfere. Give me my daughter now, or I swear I'll have you arrested." Marcus raised his hands in a placating gesture, his voice calm but firm. "Sir, please stay back. You're scaring your daughter. Let's talk about this calmly." The man's eyes narrowed dangerously. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm calling the police right now. You'll lose your job for this, you piece of trash." As the father reached for his phone, Marcus made a split-second decision. "Go ahead and call them," he said, his voice steady. "But I want you to know that I'm going to call child services. I suspect something is wrong inside your house because your daughter is terrified." The mere mention of child services caused a visible shift in the father's demeanor. His face paled, and for a moment, the aggressive facade cracked, revealing a flicker of fear. He took a step back, his hand dropping away from his phone as he ended the call and paced back to his home. Marcus felt a fleeting sense of triumph, but the problem was far from resolved. What was he supposed to do with the girl and her father still in the house? Taking her wasn't an option, and as he wrestled with his next move, his deliberation was cut short. Just as he began turning toward Lucy, intending to demand an explanation, the front door of the house burst open with a resounding bang. The scene that unfolded before Marcus's eyes was nothing short of horrifying. The father emerged once more, but this time he was dragging a woman, Rachel. Her condition made Marcus's blood run cold. Her face was severely bruised and swollen, with only one eye able to open. Though she couldn't speak, her visible eye pleaded silently for help as her husband forced her toward his car. Marcus stood frozen for a split second, the shock of the situation paralyzing him momentarily. He had suspected something was wrong, but the reality was far worse than he had imagined. Before he could intervene, the father shoved Rachel into the car and sped away, tires screeching on the pavement. Lucy's terror now took on new meaning as she tugged at Marcus's sleeve, urging him to save her mother. Please, don't let him hurt Mommy anymore. Lucy cried out, her voice filled with desperation. Marcus, still reeling from what he had just witnessed, knelt down beside Lucy. Lucy, I need you to tell me everything that's happening.
Can you do that for me?
The little girl seemed too shaken to form coherent sentences, her body trembling with fear and adrenaline. Realizing he needed to approach this differently, Marcus softened his voice. If it's too hard to tell, maybe you can show me. Lucy nodded, her small hand gripping Marcus's rough one as she led him toward the house. Despite his professional obligations, Marcus knew he couldn't ignore such clear signs of domestic violence. He had crossed a line, but there was no going back now. As they approached the front door, Marcus could hear the faint sound of glass crunching under their feet and an acrid smell wafted from the open doorway. Standing in the threshold, Marcus absorbed the scene before him. His heart sank with each detail he noticed. The interior told a story of 6 Olens that words couldn't fully capture. Broken glass and wooden splinters littered the floor, creating a hazardous path through what should have been a warm family home. Shattered picture frames lay strewn about, their happy family photos now marred by cracks and missing pieces. Splintered chairs created an obstacle course of destruction, evidence of a violent struggle. What drew Marcus's attention the most were the trampled suitcases near the door, their contents strewn across the floor, clothes, toiletries, important documents. The scene spoke of an interrupted escape or a hurried departure, and it made Marcus's heart ache for Rachel and Lucy, stirring a deep yearning to uncover the full story behind it all. Marcus turned to Lucy, who stood silently beside him, a small hand still clutching his. I can only help you by calling the police. Is that okay? The little girl nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. With Lucy's permission, Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed 911. As he waited for the operator to answer, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He knew that his actions today would have far-reaching consequences, not just for Lucy and Rachel, but for himself as well. But as he looked down at the frightened child beside him, he knew without a doubt that he was doing the right thing. When the operator answered, Marcus's voice was steady despite the chaos around him. Years of maintaining composure during his route helped him relay crucial information clearly and concisely. He provided a detailed account of both the violent scene before him and Rachel's abduction, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. As he spoke, Marcus kept a protective arm around Lucy, acutely aware of the trauma she had endured and the bravery she was showing. He silently vowed to see this through to the end, no matter what it might cost him personally. The garbage route, his job, his own safety, all of it paled in comparison to the importance of keeping this child safe and reuniting her with her mother. The wail of police sirens pierced the morning air, growing louder as they approached the house. Within minutes, several patrol cars pulled up, their lights flashing. Officers quickly secured the scene, their presence bringing some order to the chaos that had erupted in this quiet suburban neighborhood. Lucy refused to enter the house, clinging tightly to Marcus, who stayed with her outside while police investigated. A kind-faced woman with graying hair at her temples stepped outside to talk to them. She crouched down to Lucy's level, her voice gentle as she introduced herself. Can you tell me what happened? Lucy's lower lip trembled as she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad took Mom. He hurt her really bad. I'm scared I'll never see her again. She paused, her small hands clenching into fists. He's worse than a monster. He can hurt her really, really badly. The officer's face grew serious as she listened. She turned to Marcus, who quickly filled her in on what he had witnessed. The father's aggressive behavior, Rachel's visible injuries, and their hasty departure. Thank you for calling us, sir, the officer said to Marcus. She then spoke into her radio, updating her team about the father taking the injured mother. We're closing off the surrounding streets. This will help us catch him faster. Can you provide the vehicle's make, model, or license plate along with any physical description of him? Marcus took a deep breath, trying to recall the details. It's a dark blue sedan, an older model. I didn't catch the license plate, but the front bumper is dented on the left side. As for him, he's about 6 feet tall, medium build, wearing a black formal suit and long pants. He's got short, sleek hair and a beard. That's all I can remember. As more officers emerged from the house, their faces grim, the kind officer continued to gently question Lucy. "Sweetie, can you tell me more about what's been happening? Has your dad hurt your mom before?" Lucy nodded, her eyes filling with tears again as she spoke in her simple child language. She revealed more details: her father's alcoholism, the divorce he refused to accept, and his pattern of returning to their house to terrorize them. "He gets really mad when he drinks. He drinks a lot," she said, gesturing to her bruised face. You can see how much that mattered to him. The officer's face hardened slightly at this. "No one is above the law, Mrs. Harper. Can you tell us about what led to today's events?" Rachel nodded, taking another sip of water before continuing. "Last week, Dennis begged for one last chance. He said he had visited a psychiatrist and suddenly came up with the idea of a family holiday to repair our relationship. He showed up early this morning, but I caught him already half drunk and smelling of alcohol." She paused, her hand trembling slightly as she set down the glass. "I knew then that nothing had changed. While he was still asleep, I quickly secured Lucy's and my passports at my mother's house. That's when Dennis took me, and I didn't manage to take Lucy with him. So instead..." Rachel gestured to her battered face, unable to finish the sentence. Officer Johnson's face was a mask of professional calm, but his eyes betrayed his anger at the situation. "Thank you, Mrs. Harper. Your bravery in sharing this will help us build a strong case against your ex-husband." Just then, Dennis's voice could be heard from the street, loud and insistent. "This is all a misunderstanding. What she said isn't true." The officer excused himself and descended from the porch to the street. Marcus watched as Dennis spoke firmly to the officers. Dennis, still in handcuffs and guarded by other officers, but seeming to regain some of his earlier swagger, shouted, "We were divorced, yes, but I never beat her. I just wanted a family trip. Rachel is the one who hid the passports and threw away my gifts. She just doesn't like seeing me bond with Lucy," Dennis continued, his voice carrying through the open air. Rachel's face paled, but she remained silent. Marcus felt a surge of anger at Dennis's audacity. He stepped forward, addressing the officer. "Sir, if I may, I can provide witness testimony. I saw Mr. Harper's racist behavior towards me and Lucy's extreme fear of him." He explained about the brand new items he had rescued from the trash bin earlier that morning. "Mrs. Harper, is it true that your husband brought all those new things, the new school uniform and backpack for Lucy?" Rachel nodded, her eyes widening with realization. "Yes, it's true. Dennis brought all those new things. The school uniform and backpack were for Lucy because he intended to take her and move her to a new school somewhere I didn't know about." Detective Johnson's eyebrows raised at this new information. "Mr. Taylor," he addressed Marcus, "your testimony could be crucial in this case. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement." Just then, another officer entered the porch. "We've conducted a breathalyzer test on Mr. Harper. He's well over the legal limit." Detective Johnson nodded grimly. "That settles it. We're taking him in on multiple charges: driving under the influence, domestic abuse, violating a restraining order, and attempted kidnapping." As the officer left to finalize the arrest, Detective Johnson turned back to Rachel and Lucy. "Mrs. Harper, we'll need you and Lucy to come down to the station as well to give your statements. Is there someone who can accompany you?" Rachel asked. Her mother stepped forward. "I'll go with them." "Of course." The detective nodded approvingly, then turned to Marcus. "Mr. Taylor, we appreciate your involvement in this case. Your actions today potentially saved 2 lives. However, I understand you were on duty when this occurred." Marcus nodded, suddenly remembering his abandoned route and the likely consequences he would face. "Yes, sir. I should probably contact my company and explain the situation," he replied. As the group prepared to leave for the police station, Marcus couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: relief that Rachel and Lucy were safe, pride in knowing he had done the right thing, but also anxiety about what this would mean for his job and his future. As he followed the police cars and his garbage truck, heading toward an uncertain future, Marcus knew that regardless of the consequences, he would make the same choice again in a heartbeat. The police station was alive with activity as officers processed Dennis's arrest, and a detective worked on finalizing the statements from Rachel, Lucy, and Marcus. The trash bag containing various items had been secured by law enforcement as evidence. The harsh glow of fluorescent lights and the sterile institutional walls stood in stark contrast to the quiet suburban streets where Marcus's day had begun, a stark reminder of how drastically everything had shifted in just a few hours. Rachel sat in a chair, holding an ice pack to her face, with Lucy curled up next to her. Eleanor, the grandmother, hovered nearby, alternating between comforting words and worried glances at her daughter and granddaughter. Marcus stood a short distance away, feeling somewhat out of place in his work uniform amidst the sea of police officers and detectives as they waited for the formal finalization to end. Rachel caught Marcus's eye and motioned for him to come closer, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "Marcus, I don't even know how to begin thanking you. You put yourself at risk to help us, and you've probably jeopardized your job. I'm so sorry for involving you in our family crisis." Marcus shook his head, a small smile on his face. "Please don't apologize. I'm just glad you and Lucy are safe now. That's what matters most." Rachel's eyes welled with tears. "Still, you didn't have to get involved. Most people wouldn't have." "I've been taking your trash for 2 years," Marcus replied, his tone lightening slightly. "But only now do I see you in this state. I couldn't just walk away." A ghost of a smile crossed Rachel's bruised face. "It's not a coincidence that you were a little late than usual today, is it?" Marcus chuckled softly. "You noticed I was late." "Of course," Rachel replied. "I also noticed you were alone without a partner." Marcus nodded, reflecting on the strange twist of fate. "This is the first time I've operated alone without a partner. Everything that happened today, it's hard not to think there was some greater purpose to it all." Rachel's eyes softened. "I'd like to believe that too, that someone was watching over us all." Their conversation was cut short when a detective approached, handing each of them a document to sign their statements. As Rachel and Marcus penned their signatures, Rachel glanced back at Marcus. "When is this all over?" "When things calm down, I'd like to thank you properly, maybe dinner." Marcus, surprised by the offer, nodded. "I'd like that. And please don't hesitate to call if you need anything, though," he added with a self-deprecating smile. "I hope you never need my help again. It would probably mean dire circumstances, given, you are in a better financial position than I am." The comment intended to lighten the mood succeeded in drawing a genuine laugh from Rachel, a small moment of levity in an otherwise heavy situation, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was still room for human connection and hope. "No, we all need each other," Rachel said. As the officer excused them and thanked them for their contributions, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to see his employer's number flashing on the screen. Taking a deep breath, he answered the call, ready to face whatever consequences his actions today might bring. "Hello," he answered, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "Marcus, this is Sarah from HR," came the response. "We've been trying to reach you. Your truck's GPS shows you're off route, and we've received calls about missed pickups. What's going on?" Marcus took a deep breath and began to explain the morning's events to his surprise and relief. Sarah's response was understanding rather than punitive. "I see," she said after he finished his account. "That's quite a situation you found yourself in. Finish up at the police station and then complete as much of your route as you can. We'll need to discuss this further when you return to the depot." As the call ended, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. While he knew there would likely still be consequences for abandoning his route, the initial response gave him hope that his job wasn't necessarily in jeopardy. With the immediate crisis over and the formal statements done, Marcus prepared to resume his interrupted route. As he was about to excuse himself, Lucy came to him, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. Marcus, seeing the hopeful look on Lucy's face, found himself nodding. "If it's all right with your mom, I don't see why not. It might be cramped and smelly, but..." Eleanor, the grandmother, overhearing the exchange, chimed in with a gentle tease. "Well, We can always shower later, and when will you get another chance to ride in a garbage truck? Lucy and Rachel, seeing her daughter's excitement, finally relented. All right, if you don't mind, it would be nice not to have to call a cab, Rachel replied. And so, in an unexpected turn of events, Marcus found himself helping Rachel, Lucy, and Eleanor into the cab of his garbage truck. As they pulled out of the police station parking lot, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists and turns this day had taken. The ride back to their neighborhood was filled with a mixture of emotions. In the tight, cramped space, Lucy's occasional comments and questions about the truck's operations brought moments of lightness, while Rachel's quiet gratitude and Eleanor's supportive presence filled the cab with a sense of hope rather than fear. As they neared their street, Marcus felt a sense of coming full circle. The day had started with him running late on his route, and now here he was, returning to the same neighborhood under completely different circumstances. When they finally reached Rachel and Lucy's house, now peaceful in the afternoon light, Marcus helped them out of the truck before entering their home. Lucy turned and hugged Marcus tightly, a gesture of pure gratitude that touched him deeply. Rachel, her arm around Lucy's shoulders, looked at Marcus with a mixture of gratitude and something else, perhaps a newfound respect or understanding. "Thank you, Marcus," she said softly, "for everything you do. You truly have the purest heart, serving the community in more ways than one." As Marcus watched them enter their home, Eleanor followed close behind. He felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The simple observation about his service to the community resonated deeply, validating not just his actions today, but the dignity of his daily work and its importance to the community's well-being. Climbing back into his truck, Marcus took a moment to reflect on the day's events. He knew that challenges lay ahead, explanations to his employers, possible legal proceedings as a witness, and the potential fallout from Dennis's threats. But as he started the engine and prepared to resume his route, Marcus felt a sense of peace. Whatever came next, he knew he had made a difference today, and that knowledge would carry him through whatever challenges lay ahead. With a deep breath and a determined set to his shoulders, Marcus put the truck in gear and set off to complete his route. The day was far from over, but he faced the remainder of it with a renewed sense of purpose and pride in his work, both as a garbage collector and as a member of his community.